Hey everyone! So today we're going to take a little journey inspired by the art historian E.H. Gombrich to explore a really fascinating idea. What if the whole purpose of art isn't what we in the West have always assumed it is? We're going to look eastwards to discover some completely different reasons for creating art in the first place. So yeah, let's challenge our own assumptions and see what we find.
For centuries, there's been this really dominant idea in the West that art should basically just hold a mirror up to nature, right? That its job is to copy reality as faithfully as possible. But is that all it's for? Is that its only job? That's the core question we're really going to dig into today.
All right, so let's try to step outside that familiar box, the idea of art as just a copy or a story. We're going to journey to two really different cultural traditions that found their own pretty profound answers to the question of what art is even for. And our first stop is the Islamic world. Now here, a single, powerful religious idea didn't just influence art, it totally reshaped its direction, and it led to something that is truly, truly unique.
Okay, so this is the crucial point. The faith prohibited making images of living things, people, animals, to prevent the worship of idols. Now, you might expect a rule like that to be a total creative dead end, right? But what we're about to see is that it was actually the total opposite. It was a catalyst for a brand new kind of beauty.
It gave birth to this, the arabesque. So instead of painting people or animals, artists channeled all of that creative energy into these mesmerizing, super intricate designs, just full of flowing, geometric, and plant-like shapes.
So instead of stifling creativity, this rule sparked a full-on creative explosion. Artists became absolute masters of pattern and geometry. They created these complex, seemingly infinite designs that adorned, everything from the walls of mosques to the beautiful carpets people walked on. It was a completely different way of beautifying the world, one that found something divine in order and pattern, not in copying a face or a figure.
Okay, so from a world where art was shaped by one single, powerful rule, we now travel to China. And here we find another fascinating story. It's not about a single rule, but about how the very purpose of art evolved so dramatically over time, shifting along with the philosophical ideas of the culture. So early on, under the influence of thinkers like Confucius, art was really seen as a moral guide. It was supposed to show these great figures and stories from the past to remind people, what virtue looked like. But later, as Buddhism and Taoism became more influential, the whole purpose shifted. Art became an aid for meditation. And you can literally see this philosophical shift in the art itself. The focus just moved away from all those heroic tales and moral lessons. Instead, artists turned to landscapes, mountains, water, trees. And these weren't just pretty pictures. They were meant to be portals for deep contemplation, a way to connect with the natural world on a much more spiritual level.
But this is what leads us to the most profound difference of all. It's not just what the Chinese masters painted, but how they painted it. Their entire method was just fundamentally different from their Western counterparts.
This chart really just crystallizes the whole thing. On one side, you've got the Western artists, often sitting right there in front of their subject, trying to mirror nature perfectly. And on the other, you have the Chinese artist, whose goal was to capture the inner spirit or the mood of a scene. They didn't paint from life, they painted from memory, turning the act of painting itself into a kind of meditation.
Their process was really a discipline of the mind. An artist would first study the techniques of the great masters who came before them. Then they'd go out into nature and just spend hours, maybe even days, just looking, absorbing. They'd return to their studio and, drawing on all that deep contemplation, they would paint the feeling of the landscape, completely from memory.
And this quote, it just gets to the very heart of it. The painting wasn't supposed to be a perfect photograph of a mountain. No, it was meant to be a record of the artist's emotional and spiritual reaction to that mountain, captured in these fresh, energetic strokes of the brush. You see, in China, painting, calligraphy, and poetry weren't really seen as separate arts. They were all kind of one and the same. The mastery of the brush that you needed to write beautiful poetry was the exact same skill you used to paint the landscape. It was all about expressing an inner vision with fluidity and grace.
So what does this all mean? Well, this whole journey east shows us that while Western art was often laser-focused on realism, Eastern art was chasing a totally different kind of perfection, a different kind of refinement.
Ultimately, by letting go of this need to just copy what something looks like, Chinese artists reached this incredible pinnacle of art that was focused on something much deeper, capturing the spiritual essence of a subject. The goal was not to show you what a mountain looks like, but to make you feel what it is to be with that mountain, to share in the artist's own moment of quiet contemplation.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over. Knowing this, that these incredible paintings are basically invitations to meditate, that they are expressions of a feeling rather than a literal scene, does it change how you see them? Does it maybe unlock a new way of looking? It's a whole different way of experiencing art, one that invites us all to slow down and look inward. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey.